Hello everyone, Sergey from Ushanka Show again. Today we have a slightly unplanned video. I guess we can call it will be another episode of Ushanka Vlog. And I just wanted to say a couple of words to the news that the Trump administration is shutting down American broadcast stations, radio, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, and I think there's a couple of others. So I don't know if you watched my video. I have a separate video made a while back. I'll link will be below in the comment section. Because back during the Soviet days, these radio stations, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, were a huge deal. Soviet government hated them. They called them Вражеские голоса, enemy voices, and they were jamming them extremely hard. Around every large Soviet city, my hometown of Kiev included, they had huge radio towers that were creating a lot of radio noise on the frequencies where BBC, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe were transmitting. So it was really hard to listen to them. Early in the morning it was kind of a little bit better, and that's one of my recollections from my Soviet childhood, because the only day I had off when I was in school was Sunday. We had to go to school 6 days a week. But on Sunday, I knew that my father would be, he had a geologist, like a decent radio, had a shortwave, all that stuff. So he would be listening to the enemy voices in the early morning. So I'll come to his spot and I'll, hang out with him, and he would be, you had to constantly change your frequency when you listen, because the radio station was moving frequency to get away from the jamming, and of course jammers were following and we were following. And that was bizarre, to hear news that you don't hear in the Soviet Union, and suddenly information that's like, wow, I never heard of this. Some Soviet cruise ship stopped in like Germany, and like 20 people asked for political asylum. It was like, wow, probably lies, maybe not. So it's kind of sad, and it makes me nostalgic because it's memories of my late father. And also I need to mention, and I talk about it in my video about enemy voices and about my video about Chernobyl, I would say millions of Soviet citizens, mostly of Ukraine and Belarus, alive thanks to enemy voices, thanks to Voice of America, Radio Free Europe. Because when Chernobyl power station exploded on April 26, 1986, next Sunday, there was classical music on radio. It was a Swan Lake Ballet on TV. It was zero information about what happened. And they kept on the lead for so long that I believe a lot of people would die if not for the enemy voices, because that's what we heard, the truth and information. They told us, like, there's a big accident occurred in Chernobyl power plant, and you should stay indoors. Don't go outside if you don't have to. Don't consume any fresh food. No milk, no fresh, onions, whatever. So it's like, don't consume anything fresh. Stay with canned goods. Sealed your windows, taped them up, and it was like, so a lot of people did that. They listened to the enemy voices, and I believe that's probably what helped them to stay alive, not to get cancer, get contaminated, because Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, technically should be evacuated. The entire city should be evacuated because it was really bad. I don't know how much you know about radiation, but it's one thing if there's a pipe with a radioactive fluid and you get radiation that way. The worst if it's in the air, if it's airborne radioactivity, it gets in your lungs, in your eyes, in your skin, and those alpha particles, they will wreck you. That's what kills people, is when you inhale or you swallow radionuclide particles and those iodines. So because a lot of people listen to the enemy voices, they stayed indoors, they didn't consume fresh food, and it's probably saved their lives. So I'm so grateful for Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, for telling us the truth and saving lives. Because all we heard is rumors, like suddenly there's a rumor that all the government officials evacuated their kids quietly out of Kyiv and they left themselves. And it was like, okay, obviously something going on. They don't tell us anything, but then you hear voices, enemy voices telling us to stay indoors or try to leave. So that was the situation. So it was extremely important at that time. As of now, I have mixed feelings because I just think I'm not sure who in modern days right now listens to the radio, especially shortwave radio. I'm not a spring chicken. I was born in 1971, so I'm gonna be 54 this summer. I don't listen to radio at all. In a car, I prefer to listen book on CDs. I'm getting to the point to be called old geezer or old timer. I listen on the books on CDs in my car while I drive to work or drive around. I don't listen to radio ever, probably. And especially, I don't know who still has radios at home and they listen to shortwave. Even in modern day Russia, yes, Putin monopolized mass media. They all only do stuff what he wants to do. But there's a YouTube, there's a Telegram, Instagram. So all those new media, that's where people are. So I don't know, is it worth it to spend millions of dollars on the radio when I don't think anyone listens right now? So I said I have mixed feelings because it was a great tool to help people in dictatorship countries like former Soviet Union, modern day Russia. But I don't think that's the way you can do it now. Now YouTube is the way to go. Like, this is why Russia is desperately trying to block YouTube. They had already several attempts trying to slow it down, try to choke it, and they're trying to move their people away from YouTube to the Russian. It's called, I think, our YouTube. And Putin knows the power of propaganda. I mean, he spent millions of dollars on Russia Today, RT, but I don't think they're doing radio. They got kicked out of YouTube. So as I have mixed feelings, and I feel bad for all the people who work there. I mean, they're probably quality journalism, and now they just got kicked out of the buildings, lost jobs overnight. I think there's still ways to reach out to Russians and North Koreans, but it's not through the radio. Well, maybe China, because China, they really lock their internet, but otherwise, like modern days Russia, they all watch YouTube. They don't listen to shortwave radios, so it's just a big waste of time. And now with monetizing and other sponsorships, I think it's possible to I don't know, maybe surviving and doing pretty good business on your own without government subsidies. But as I said, Putin knows it's worth to spend money on propaganda. That's why he spends millions on Russia Today. So as I said, I have mixed feelings, but I just want to say goodbye to Voice of America, Голос Америки, to Radio Free, Radio Свободная Европа. I'm not sure if there used to be German Wave, Deutsche Welle, there was a German radio stations. We even had Radio of Albania. We didn't listen to that one much because there was this hardcore Stalinist, propaganda. They were anti-Soviet, but that was from the different angle. That was kind of hilarious. So anyway, so that's what kind of brought memories. This, as I said, unplanned video. Just wanted to share my opinion and my recollection of those days. Just say thank you again. I hope you all guys, whoever works at those radio stations, you will move to the new media formats. There's a podcast out there, right? There's so many new ways to reach out to people. Radio is, it's almost like sending telegrams. No one does it anymore. No one mails letters. I still like to get postcards. I have my P.O. box here in town, so I get mail from fans. I enjoy that once again. But yeah, it's probably a good move, but just not done the right way. It would probably make sense to just, make a transition from radio to YouTube, podcasting, but it is what it is. Trump administration is on this kind of extreme path of chopping expenses, government expenses. I don't know if it's a good idea, if it's a lot of times it's not really sounds like illegal. But as I said, I just want to say once again, thank you so much for those enemy voices that brought us the truth and good information back in the Soviet days, and for saving our lives during Chernobyl accident. That was a great. I'm very grateful for that, although I still played outside, dumbass. So anyway, and once again, I have a pretty long video on this topic about enemy voices. If you're interested, link will be below in the comment section if you're new to my channel. And I'll probably link also a video about Chernobyl. I have a long video about 5 things that HBO Chernobyl show missed. And there I mentioned the situation about classical music on the radio, because it's 1986. We just got new General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev, and he was very young. So I was upset as a kid because I kind of liked getting days off at school every time our leader dies. And, we got Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko. So suddenly I got 3 days off like almost every year. And then when Gorbachev got elected, I looked at like, man, this guy is too young. I'm not going to get another day off. And I was correct. He lived like until like 92. But on April of 1986, they started playing classical music on the radio. And I remember my first thought was, I can't believe it. Gorbachev died. We're going to have another day off. But I asked my dad, he's like, do you think he died? Because that's the only reason we started hearing classical music on the radio. Like they'll stop all the regular programming and just playing classical music. And we're in trouble. And he's like, well, in trouble. There's a bad news coming up. And he's like, I don't know. And then they're like, no, there's rumors about something happened at Chernobyl power plant. So anyway, so that's just I decided to share with you. I hope you like this video. If you do, you know what to do. Maybe it will help YouTube to notice my channel and promote this video. So anyway, thank you so much for watching Ushanka Show. Thank you so much for everyone who supports my work through sponsorship and Patreon. Always greatly appreciated. More videos will be coming, but just this one is kind of unplanned. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. До свидания. Goodbye.